This video is going to show you how to draw and shade three-dimensional geometric objects. So when we look at the sphere, it's really just a circle, but how the light hits it and the cast shadow, that makes it into more of a three-dimensional shape. For this, my light source is coming from the left, so it's going to be darker on the right, and the cast shadow is going to go off to the right. Now, the shape of a sphere is just a circle, so what I like to do is I like to draw it in the air a couple of times first before putting my pencil down. It can be a little wonky, that's okay. You can go and fix it after. And then I also like to draw in the outline for the cast shadow shape. So it's sort of an elongated oval. It's actually longer than the sphere shape itself because the light source is so dramatic in this case. Now when I shade this, you'll notice that the light kind of hits a center point, kind of almost up on the side a little bit, and then it gradually starts to get darker as you go further away from the light source, so on the right hand side and on the bottom. So as I build up that value, I want to start layering and pressing down harder with my pencil, and then get really dark right up against that edge. And when I do the cast shadow, that's sitting on a flat surface, so I'm going to keep those marks more straight, whereas I have more gradation and curved marks on the curved surface of the sphere itself. So a really dark little cast shadow right up against the edge there. That really makes it look like it's grounded, and it kind of makes it look like it pops. Now for the shape of my cone, there's two tapered sides that come to a point, and the bottom of it is curved. It's not flat. And if you look at the proportions of these objects, I noticed that this one is twice as high as it is wide. So I'll go ahead and make that sort of elongated V shape to show the two sides. And then make sure to curve my bottom. And I can double check my proportions and make sure that my drawing, it's about twice as high as it is wide, so I know it's not too tall or too short. And even though the shadow goes out of frame in this case, it would be sort of a long, thin triangle shape. Now cones are have a curved surface to them, so I want to lay down my values first, but then kind of go back in and curve my shadow mark so that the cone looks like it's round and not flat. And then always in this case, I'm going to make my cast shadows have straight marks because they're always sitting on a flat surface. Now, if the cone is laying on its side, it's pretty similar, but now we're also going to see a little bit of that flat bottom. So it's still going to come to a point, but in this case, the curve is kind of going in the opposite direction, and you can see an ellipse for the bottom. Based on how it's facing you, you'll either see a little skinny bit or you'll see more of it, depending on what angle it's sitting at. So that's just kind of an oval or an ellipse shape. Sometimes I like to kind of find the middle of it and then go up from there to figure out where the point would be. When you are drawing, you want to keep your lines nice and loose. You don't want to commit to really tight, hard outlines because that can, if you need to fix something, it makes it a little bit more difficult to fix. So when I'm shading this, the light hits that flat part, it's really light and consistent, but then the side is pretty much the same as how I shaded the first one over here. So for my cylinder, the top is a flat ellipse, kind of like the cone that we just saw, the bottom of it. And depending on your eye level, how high you're sitting, you'll see either more of that ellipse or it will be more foreshortened, which means flattened or squished, and it will be like more of a skinny oval. And the sides are parallel, so they're straight up and down from one another. So I'll go ahead and I'll start with that top. It's kind of an oval shape or an ellipse. And then I'll drop down my two sides, making sure to keep them nice and straight and up and down. And like with our cone, the bottom is curved, it's not flat. It actually is parallel with that top curve. Those two edges are parallel. So my top surface is flat and my side surface is curved. Oh, and the cylinder, same thing, it's twice as high as it is wide. Sometimes I see people do this type of a thing where they make their cylinders or their objects look like they're see-through. They're not transparent objects though, they're solid, so you don't see that back edge. So you shouldn't include it in your drawing, but if it helps you to make the shape, that's okay. Just make sure to erase the part that you wouldn't actually see. So this top part, like I said, it's flat, so we'll shade that with straight marks, and then the side gets curved marks so that it has the illusion of being round or spherical. And as is the case with all of these, my light is coming from the left, so it's lighter towards the left and then darker towards the right. So notice how I'm curving my pencil marks as I shade. So I'm kind of doing a couple things at once here. I'm pressing down harder as I get to the right, I'm layering more as I get to the right to show those values, but I'm also curving my pencil marks on the curved side of the cylinder so that it looks round, and then just flat marks on the top. Something interesting is going on with the shadow here. You actually see two overlapping shadows. So if you draw those both in, that's going to be sort of a really interesting, realistic look to your shadows. It's really carefully observed. But if it's a little too complicated, you can always just pick one set or the other. A lot of times this happens because there's multiple light sources. So like in this case, I'm getting the light source from my spotlight, but also the light source from the window. So that's why you see two sets of cast shadows coming from that cylinder. So that's how that looks when it's shaded. Notice there's that little overlapping part in the center. And my pyramid, so the bottom almost makes like a V shape, and then there's, to the center point, there's a straight line that comes down, kind of like an arrow shape almost. And depending on what angle this is sitting at, you might see more of the left and less of the right, or vice versa, or sometimes you'll even see a little tiny bit of each of the left and right sides, and a big part of that front side as well. So that's kind of just a tricky thing that messes with your eyes a little bit. That doesn't happen very often, but once in a while. But usually you'll see some of the left and some of the right. So when I draw this one, I'm just choosing to start with the bottom. Make sure it's not flat, it's pointed, it makes a V shape. And then that front corner just kind of comes almost like straight up from the point of the V. Like I said, it will look like a downwards facing arrow. And then I kind of connect the outsides of that sort of arrow shape to the top part. And I'm starting really light with my lines before I really commit to anything, kind of keeping it loose and sketchy, and just kind of drawing right over the things I need to fix as I go along. You can put in that little square thing at the top if you want to. You don't have to, but you can. The cast shadow that comes out of this, we get a double cast shadow again here, but both of them do make kind of just like a long pointy triangle. And when I shade this, you'll notice one side is light and one side is dark. But the value is consistent because it's a flat side. So in this case, the light source is coming from the left. So again, the right side is going to be darker. I'm keeping my lines as I'm shading nice and straight, and it's a consistent value. And even on this left side, which is light, I want to put a little value on it. I don't want to leave it blank white. Make sure you bring them right up to the edge, the values, so that it makes that edge for you without having to have an outline. And for our last shapes, we're going to do the cube and the rectangular prism together. So both of these shapes have 3 sets of 3 parallel sides. That's one set. That's a second set. That and that are parallel. And then the third set is straight up and down. That edge, and that edge are parallel. And it's the same exact thing with the rectangular prism, only now it's like longer and stretched out. So it's the same thing. That edge, and that back edge are parallel. They stay straight up and down. That edge, and then way over here, that edge right there are parallel. And that edge, and that edge are parallel. So I'll draw the cube first. So in this case, you kind of look at, again, how it's sitting. Depending, you might see more of one side and less of the other. So in this case, I see a little bit more of the left and a little bit less of the right. And I see a lot more of the left and a lot less of the right. But those edges still stay parallel. And again, depending on your eye level, you might see more or less of the top or more or less of the 2 sides. So it just kind of depends what angle your eye level is at. So I'm going to do, I just kind of like to make my parallel edges first and then change them into the actual edges and angles that I'm seeing. So I like to set up those sets of parallels first. So I'll do my ones that are straight up and down to begin with. You can use the edge of your paper actually to make sure that your lines are nice and straight up and down and they're not kind of flopping over. I see that sometimes. That's a little trick to help that. Okay, so then this set, that edge, and that edge are parallel. And then for my final set of 3, actually I'm going to pull that back a little bit just because of the camera lens. It's a little bit different than how I'm seeing it through my eyes, but just for the sake of demonstration, I want to pull that back edge back a little bit. So that means the other edge is going to have to move back in a second too. So that edge, and that edge are parallel, and then I'll bring that one back a little bit more just so the corner connects. So, I mean, you can stop and correct at any time, you know, seeing the problem is half the battle. And on a cube, the 4 sides are always equal in length. Now, when I go to shade this, there's 3 distinct values. There's a light value, a dark value, and a medium value. So just like with my pyramid, I'm gonna bring that value right up to the edge on that side, and it's a flat side, so I'm gonna keep my mark straight. So this is the light side, so those marks pretty light there. This is the medium side, so layering a little bit more. You can switch your pencil to get right up to the edge if that helps you. If got too dark, you can erase out and make it lighter. And that one's really dark, so I'm going to press down really hard. And for the cat shadow shape, it's kind of making that square again. For the sake of demonstration, I kind of faked the shadow shape just a little bit here, but you still get the idea. And then for the rectangular prism, same thing. I'm going to start with my 3 straight up and down sides. This one's way over now. Again, this is twice as long as it is high. And that edge. So that edge there goes back at a pretty extreme angle. That edge and that edge are parallel. And these 3 are parallel. So you can kind of do the 3 at a time. You can kind of also like connect your corners and then go back. So you can kind of jump around and work back and forth when you're drawing these. There's not like one set way to do it, but just kind of keep the rules, quote unquote, in mind. Okay, and that edge are parallel. You're never going to see 3 sides on a cube, or 4 sides on a cube or a rectangular prism. You're only going to see 3, so you don't want to do this type of a thing. So there it is, all shaded. It's the same as the cube, it's just longer.